The air inside Gregory Henshaw's antique shop was thick with the scent of aged paper, varnished wood, and something more elusive, a whisper of forgotten things yearning to be found. It was an ordinary autumn afternoon when it arrived, wrapped in worn burlap, tied with twine. The package sat on the counter like an abandoned relic from another time. Gregory lifted it with practiced hands, fingers tingling as he unraveled the layers. Inside lay an ancient mask, its surface dark and pitted with age, carved with intricate symbols that seemed to shift under the dim shop lights. "Curious piece," he murmured, running a thumb across the cold surface. A whisper curled around the edges of his thoughts. A voice, distant yet intimate, seeping into his mind. He shook his head, blinking. Just his imagination, surely. But the whisper persisted. That night, Gregory placed the mask in the shop's display case. Yet he found himself lingering, staring at it longer than he should. He could almost feel it calling to him, weaving a web of unease in his chest. Something about the mask wasn't right, but curiosity, as it often did, gnawed at him harder than fear. Gregory's antique emporium sat at the heart of Blackwood, a quaint town cradled by thick forests and autumn mist. The shop was a labyrinth of curiosities, an eclectic blend of forgotten heirlooms and arcane oddities that gave the place a peculiar charm. Locals often wandered in, browsing through shelves of dusty tomes and brass trinkets, savoring the cozy embrace of nostalgia. Beyond the shop, Gregory led a quiet life in his modest apartment above the emporium. Evenings were spent with a book in hand and a fire crackling in the hearth. He enjoyed the solitude, the predictability of it all, until now. The mask disrupted his routine. He caught himself checking it repeatedly, feeling an inexplicable pull, an urge to touch it, to listen to the whispers that coiled around him like unseen fingers. Gregory had always been a collector first, a businessman second. His passion for the esoteric had fueled his career, and his deep knowledge of artifacts had earned him a reputation for authenticity and meticulous care. Friends described him as meticulous, a man with an eye for detail and an ear for history. But Gregory's fascination with the mask was different. It gnawed at him, an obsession that eroded his usual sense of caution. As he researched its origins, he uncovered unsettling fragments, whispers of rituals long forgotten, of civilizations lost to time. Each lead left him with more questions than answers. He wasn't sure when the dreams began. In them, he saw flickering torchlight, figures adorned in ceremonial robes, their faces obscured by masks like the one in his shop. The whispers grew stronger in those midnight hours, coaxing him, promising secrets beyond his imagining. He told himself it was just his mind playing tricks. But deep down, a part of him knew better. The shop changed after the mask's arrival. At first, it was subtle, a sense of heaviness in the air, a dimming of the shop's usually warm ambiance, Customers who lingered near the display case seemed uneasy, their eyes flickering to the mask before moving away with a shudder. One elderly woman muttered something about a bad aura before scurrying out without making a purchase. Gregory found himself losing track of time while staring into the mask's hollow eyes. He thought he saw movement within the carved lines, shadows shifting, aligning in ways that made his skin prickle. Then came the incident. Items fell from shelves with no apparent cause. The shop bell chimed without anyone entering. Late one evening, as Gregory locked up, he swore he heard his name spoken in a voice that wasn't his own. The whispering had followed him beyond the confines of the shop. He tried to ignore it, but the unease rooted itself deep inside him. Something wasn't right, and though he could feel the logical part of his mind protesting, another part, the part that yearned for discovery, couldn't resist the pull of the mask. Gregory's world, once orderly and predictable, was tilting into something darker. And deep in the shadows of his shop, the mask whispered ever so softly, its secrets waiting to be unveiled. Gregory couldn't shake the feeling that the mask held secrets beyond mere history. Determined to uncover the truth, he began digging deeper into its past, reaching out to fellow collectors and historians. Each inquiry, however, was met with hesitation or silence. The mask, it seemed, carried a reputation steeped in fear. Late one night, he found himself drawn to the mask again, its whispering voice now clearer than ever, urging him to uncover its hidden past. Driven by an obsessive need, he resolved to investigate further, even if it meant venturing into the unknown. As Gregory delved into the mask's origins, he uncovered a list of previous owners, all of whom had met mysterious or untimely ends. A reclusive scholar, a wealthy industrialist, an eccentric artist. Each had possessed the mask, and each had vanished under strange circumstances. Gregory visited their homes, now abandoned or in ruins, searching for clues left behind. It wasn't long before he realized he wasn't alone in his pursuit. A shadowy figure dressed in dark clothing seemed to be following his every move. Fear gnawed at the edges of his mind, but he pressed on, and the deeper Gregory dug, the more resistance he faced. Mysterious phone calls plagued his nights, whispers of warnings telling him to leave the past buried. One evening, his shop was broken into, yet nothing was stolen, except for the mask, which had been moved from its case and placed ominously on the counter. His obsession was beginning to cost him. Friends noticed his growing paranoia, but Gregory knew something sinister was at play. Someone or something did not want him to uncover the mask's truth. Gregory developed multiple theories. Was the mask cursed, a relic of an ancient cult, or something worse? Each night brought more questions, more whispers, more unsettling visions. His resolve wavered, but the mask's pull was relentless. Gregory's investigations led him to the town's archives, where he discovered a chilling pattern. Each previous owner of the mask had experienced strange phenomena before their untimely demise. His growing obsession with the mask strained his relationships, and his once cozy shop now felt suffocating, a place of lurking dread. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, filling his dreams and waking hours with fragmented commands. The mask, it seemed, did not wish to remain just an artifact. It sought a vessel. Despite his fear, Gregory pressed on. He visited a local historian who recoiled at the sight of the mask and warned him of an ancient order known as the Veiled Ones. Their rituals, the historian whispered, required a mask just like his to harness power beyond human comprehension. Gregory's heart pounded. Had he become part of something far older and darker than he had imagined? As days passed, Gregory noticed a change in himself. His reflection seemed distorted. His thoughts became muddled with visions of unknown lands and shadowy figures. Friends and customers began avoiding the shop, whispering of a strange aura that seemed to cling to him like a second skin. Desperation set in, and he realized that the mask's influence was growing stronger with each passing moment. As Gregory pieced together fragments of truth, his theories shifted. He believed the mask was a conduit, a link to something beyond, something ancient and hungry. His hands trembled as he scrawled connections on his chalkboard, symbols matching those in forgotten texts, markings resembling rituals described in hushed tones. But his latest theory collapsed under the weight of new, terrifying evidence. A former colleague contacted him, warning him that the mask could not merely be studied, it had to be destroyed. Gregory refused to believe it at first, but the more he resisted, the more the mask's influence tightened around him. Then, the dreams turned violent. The figures in his dreams, no longer observed from the shadows, they reached for him, whispering promises of power and knowledge in voices that made his skin crawl. He awoke one night to find himself standing before the mask, his hand reaching toward it with a trembling reverence he could not explain. He recoiled in horror, realizing that his will was no longer entirely his own. Determined to resist, Gregory locked the mask away, but its whispers seeped through wood and steel, creeping into his thoughts at all hours. He reached out to Amelia Cross, an expert on ancient relics, who had once tried to warn him about the mask's true nature. Desperate, Gregory confronted those closest to the mask's origins, local occult enthusiasts, collectors, even the shadowy figure that had been following him. One by one they revealed scraps of the truth, each more damning than the last. The figure stalking him turned out to be Amelia Cross, a researcher whose mentor had perished after acquiring the mask decades ago. She claimed the mask did not simply whisper, it compelled. Those who wore it never truly removed it. Together, they devised a plan to rid Gregory of its influence. But time was running out. Late one night, as Gregory stood in his shop, staring at the mask's hollow eyes, he realized the final piece of the puzzle. The mask didn't just want to be studied, it wanted to be worn. He noticed subtle changes in himself. His voice sounded different. Unfamiliar thoughts crowded his mind. and the desire to place the mask upon his face grew stronger by the hour. Amelia warned him that the mask fed on the mind of its host, gradually erasing their identity and replacing it with something ancient and malevolent. In a desperate bid, Gregory and Amelia set out to destroy the mask, but they soon discovered it was not an ordinary artifact. Attempts to burn it, smash it, even bury it, all failed. The mask seemed impervious to destruction, and with each failed attempt, Gregory felt it creeping further into his psyche. As he fought against its hold, Gregory knew that time was running out. Either he would find a way to rid himself of the mask, or it would consume him entirely. Gregory sat alone in his dimly lit shop, staring at the mask that now seemed to pulse with a life of its own. Every attempt to destroy it had failed, and his mind was unraveling, tethered only by the thin thread of Amelia's faith in him. Doubt clouded his thoughts. What if the mask had already won? His reflection in the shop's cracked mirror revealed hollow eyes. A face no longer entirely his own. Whispers clawed at his consciousness, urging him to surrender. Amelia burst into the shop, breathless and wild-eyed, clutching a leather-bound tome she had unearthed from an old monastery. Within its brittle pages lay a ritual, one final chance to break the mask's hold. But it came with a cost, one that Gregory wasn't sure he was willing to pay. And as they prepared for the ritual, the mask's whispers turned to screams, filling the air with a tangible, suffocating presence. Amelia recited the incantations, her voice steady despite the growing darkness that coiled around them. Gregory, clutching a ceremonial dagger, felt the weight of centuries pressing down on him. Suddenly, the mask moved, its hollow eyes fixated on him with an intelligence both ancient and malevolent. A spectral figure burst from its depths, a twisted amalgamation of those it had consumed over centuries. It spoke with their voices, pleading, demanding, taunting. Gregory's hands trembled, but he stood his ground. He understood now. The mask thrived on fear, on doubt. It had been feeding off him since the moment he unwrapped it. But knowledge was power, and this time he would not falter. With a final incantation, Gregory plunged the dagger into the mask's core, shattering its hold with a deafening shriek. The air thickened, the room trembled, and for a moment he feared it had all been for nothing. But then the whispers stopped. The mask lay in ruins, its malevolent essence dissipating into the cold night. Amelia collapsed beside him, relief washing over her face. Gregory, drained but alive, stared at the shattered pieces. He was free. In the days that followed, Gregory slowly reclaimed his life. The shop returned to its former warmth, and though the shadows lingered at the edges of his memory, he knew he had faced something few could comprehend and survived. He kept one shard of the mask, a reminder of the battle he had fought, and the dangers that lurked within forgotten relics. And as he placed it in a locked drawer, he whispered a silent vow to never let his curiosity lead him down such a dark path again. an ancient